and welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you're a returning viewer. I'm Maisie and this is Maisie with a Z. Today we're going to be talking about the books I read in August, so let's go ahead and get into it. The first book I'm going to be talking about is Scattered All Over the Earth by Yoko Tawada. This is not a book I would have picked up for myself usually, but I had to read it for a class, so I did. It was okay. One of our main characters is Hiroko, who used to live in Japan and then went to Denmark for college, I think. And at some point, Japan disappeared. And it's very unclear in the book why and how and in what manner it disappeared. Like, it's unclear if it just sank into the ocean or whether it's physically still there, but as a country is unable to communicate with the outside world or anything. So she's been living in various Scandinavian countries and created this new language that she calls Panska, which she terms as a homemade language, which is mutually understandable among speakers of various Scandinavian languages. And so she teaches that to refugee children. And his other main character, I think it's pronounced Knut, it's K-N-U-T. He studies language in some capacity and he sees Hiroko on a TV segment around people whose countries have disappeared in various manners. And he's very interested in her new language and wants to meet her, and when he does meet her, they kind of set out on this little mini quest to try and find someone else who speaks Japanese, because she hasn't spoken Japanese to anyone in a really long time. And so then it kind of follows them all over Europe, and different chapters are the different points of view of different people they encounter and such. It's an interesting read. I'd recommend it if it sounds interesting to you, because it definitely has intriguing ideas. The issue is I personally just could not gel with the very limited world building. I don't know, it takes a very surrealist, strange approach to what events have actually happened. This is set in the not so distant future of our world, and it just doesn't fully cover how we got to there. And the thing that bothered me the most was the lack of understanding about what happened to Japan, because that seems like something that should be knowable. The fact they just talk about it disappearing and there being no explanation of it, and not only there being no explanation of it, but there being different explanations of it. And also the fact that not only has Japan disappeared, but it's also disappeared from the collective cultural consciousness of the rest of the world. At one point I think they referred to sushi as a Finnish food. I don't remember. But it's just strange. This is the first book in a trilogy. I don't know if I'll be continuing the trilogy or not. On the one hand, I would really like to know if there ever is a reveal of what actually happened to Japan in this. But on the other hand, I don't know if it's worth the effort. So yes, this book does have interesting ideas. It explores a lot about language and national identity. It follows different ramifications of speaking the language that surrounds you versus speaking not necessarily properly, but speaking a language that everyone can understand, and then not speaking language at all. And I do think it has intriguing ideas. It's just, I really wish those ideas had been delivered in a different style and with a little more explanation, because I don't think any of that was necessary for the ideas that are explored. I gave Scattered All Over the Earth, I think, 3.5 stars. And then next up was Ghosted by Amanda Quain. This is a Northanger Abbey retelling, and I received an e-arc of this from NetGalley. It came out on July 25th, and I only finished it August 1st, which is not my proudest moment because I was really excited for this book. It's a gender-bent Northanger Abbey retelling. So our main character is Hattie Tilney, so the Mr. Tilney equivalent, and she goes to Northanger Abbey, which is America's most haunted high school, and it's a very prestigious boarding school, and her mother is the headmistress, and basically her entire family's been traumatized since her father died a couple years previously. And for Hattie in particular, Hattie and her father had shared a love of ghost hunting and learning about ghost stories, and so when he died, she kind of swore off all that, which is hard when you go to the most haunted high school in North America, where there are constant ghost hunting enthusiasts showing up all the time, and it's a big part of the school culture. And so she instead, in response to that, decided to become the most normal person possible, do everything she can to fit in, because she had been kind of an outcast for her ghosts obsession in middle school. And then Kit Morland, who's the equivalent of Catherine Morland in Northern Abbey. Kit shows up and he's on a scholarship from like the main ghost hunting league in North America. He and Hattie end up paired on a investigative documentary making project about ghosts at the school. They end up growing closer over the course of that, and it's these intersecting beliefs over Hattie, who very firmly refuses to even consider the possibility of ghosts, and Kit, who obviously does believe in them because he's on a scholarship for this. And their dynamic is so cute. I love them. I really enjoyed the book. My main issues were some of the more minor characters, namely Hattie's older sister and Hattie's two best friends. They were all jerks. And they're based off of characters who are horrible in the original book, but they were all jerks, and then they tried to redeem them at the end, but it just didn't. I didn't like it. I thought it could have been handled better. But other than that, I really enjoyed the book, and I gave it, I believe, 4.5 stars. I'd really recommend it if you like Jane Austen or like cute contemporary romance books or anything to do with ghosts. It has all of those things. So yeah, I really enjoyed it and would definitely recommend it. Next up was Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune. The first book of Carly Fortune's I had read was Every Summer After, which I read earlier this year, I think. I definitely liked parts of Every Summer After, but it had the cheating trope, which I can't do. So Meet Me at the Lake I wanted to give a shot because, one, I got it on sale at Costco, and two, I was like, it won't have the cheating trope. So it'll probably have stuff I liked about Every Summer After. But it was a book. It wasn't worth the $10 I spent on it. Fern, our main character, grew up at her mother's lakeside resort that she runs, and Fern hates it, and she's always wanted to move to the city, largely because in her teens she acted out a lot, and now everyone kind of has preconceived notions of her, and so she moved to the city for college, to Toronto, and never looked back. She had met Will Baxter and her at the end of her senior year of college, and they'd spent 24 hours together. And then they swore to meet up at her mother's lakeside resort 1 year from that day. And she showed up, and he never did. The memory of him has kind of haunted her ever since. She still thinks about him all the time, but he didn't show up, and so it's a very mixed memory for her. Fast forward to the future, her mother dies, and she ends up taking over the resort for the summer. And who should check in as a guest but Will. They reconnect, and it's kind of exploring ideas about how the people we want to be in our early 20s aren't necessarily the people we end up wanting to be by the time we reach our 30s, and being scared to actually chase after what you want. I don't know. It had interesting themes that I was glad to see being discussed in a romance book, but the issue is I didn't care about Will at all. I thought he was a jerk. I saw nothing appealing about him, and the miscommunication on his end was, I couldn't come up with any justifications for it in this book. I don't know. I really wanted to like this book. I really wanted it to be cute summary romance, and I just didn't get that. I did enjoy Fern's character development, but other than that, I don't know. I can't think of much good to say about this book. I probably won't be reading any Carly Fortune books again. Next up are two books I'm discussing together, which are A Little Princess and The Secret Garden, both by Frances Hodgson Burnett. These are both classics that I would have assumed I would have read in my childhood, but I never actually ended up reading them. So I decided to read them for August for my goal of reading at least one classic book on my TBR every month. And because they're both pretty short by the same author, I paired them together. I gave both books 4.5 stars. Where both times I started off the book thinking I wasn't going to enjoy it. Because A Little Princess, the main character is the most perfect Mary Sue type character ever. And The Secret Garden, the main character is the most ungrateful little menace ever. But over the course of the books, you actually see them developing and growing, and I don't know, I really love both of them. I probably prefer The Secret Garden a little more. Okay, A Little Princess basically follows this girl who is extremely rich, and she's grown up in India because it's during British colonization, and when she reaches about, I want to say 8 years old maybe, somewhere in that range, her father brings her to the UK to go to boarding school for a handful of years until she's grown up. And so she grows up at this boarding school in London, and she's everything she could possibly want because her father's very rich, and yet she's still the most kind and understanding and hardworking girl possible. Yeah, it's kind of exploring that. I can't get too much more into that without giving spoilers. But I'd say I'd give A Little Princess, I think, probably 4 stars. My main issues were, 1, just how absurdly perfect Sarah, our main character, is, and 2, because it's set around British colonization of India, and because it was written during that time, then I don't know. I can't speak to the portrayal of the Indian characters in the book. I don't know. It was probably iffy. So yeah, I gave Little Princess 4 stars. Then Secret Garden. Mary, our main character, starts off being the most horrible child ever. And on the one hand, you kind of hate her, but on the other hand, you feel bad for her because her parents literally didn't care about her. She grew up relatively wealthy. Again, she was born in India, despite being a child of a British officer and his wife. Her parents literally did not care about her. So she grew up with whatever she could possibly want, except for, someone actually caring about her or wanting her to be happy or wanting her to be remotely loved. And then one day, her parents and most of the servants and everybody die of cholera. She ends up being sent to live with her uncle in England on his remote estate on the moors, who she's never met. He's extremely she does not interact with him that much, and she's kind of constrained to either being within 2 rooms or going outside. And she ends up hearing about this secret garden that had belonged to her uncle's wife, which had been shut up for the decade since she had died. And she really wants to find this because she has never been told no. So this book, I started off thinking I wasn't going to like it because Mary is unbearable at the beginning. You end up seeing how she grows when she encounters people who actually care about her, and when she's able to be outside and actually take care of a garden. And I don't know, you see she was only unpleasant because she didn't know how, she genuinely had no clue how you're supposed to treat people. I don't know, I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars. I probably would have given it 5 stars, but just again, the questionable treatment of Indian characters in it. Especially, Mary says some definitely racist things at the beginning, which I don't think she would have said at the end, but Secret Garden, 4.5 stars. Little Princess, 4 stars. And then I read A British Girl's Guide to Hurricanes and Heartbreak by Laura Taylor Namey. And this is a sequel/companion novel to A Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow, which is one of my all-time favorite YA contemporary books. I received an e-arc of this from NetGalley. I loved it so much. It's an absolute 5-star read. It basically follows Flora, who's the younger sister of Orion, who's the love interest in the first book. And she basically, her mother has just died a couple months previously, and she's kind of spiraling and ends up running off to Miami to stay with Lila, who's the main character in the first book's family. And so she's kind of staying there. I don't know, I adore her character development. The romance is very cute, but her character development is really what made the book for me. Watching her come to terms with her mother's death and recognizing the way that she's been dealing with it is not healthy, and trying to learn what she wants out of life. Both of these books are very much about trying to decide what you want out of your life rather than what's expected of you or what you've always expected to do. But it's so cute. I love her the romance. I love her friendship with some of the other characters. Everything about it is so good. I would definitely recommend it. I don't know, they're both just gorgeous stories, and they're very much about grief and coping with loss, but they're also about growing up and learning what you want out of your life, and they also have such cute romances, and I really can't recommend them enough. And yeah, that's what I have to say about that. And then next up, the biggest disappointment of the year so far, I can't even begin to explain how upset I was reading this book, was The Sun and the Star by Rick Riordan and Marco Shiro. I don't know, I have so much to say about this book. I literally have a notes app with all of my complaints about it, where I'm probably just going to end up writing a really long Goodreads rant about it because I don't really want to make a video that's just everything wrong with this. But it could have been so good. But it was not. First off, the author's styles did not mesh at all. This was co-written between Rick Riordan and Marco Shiro, and there were sections where it was very jarring and apparent about it switching between 2 different authors. It was very strange. It did not work together at all. It was not great. And then, secondarily, Will, this basically follows Nico and Will, who are characters in the Percy Jackson universe, and Nico's our main character, and Will is his boyfriend. Nico's been a relatively central character in the universe since, like, the third Percy Jackson book, so for quite a long time. But Will has had relatively little page time, so I was really hoping to get more development out of Will in this book. But instead he spends the entire time being the most useless person possible, where the book is set in Tartarus, and Will is a child of Apollo, and basically, apparently Tartarus not only weakens him like it weakens everyone else, but is, like, outright killing him while he's there, and he knew that and still came. So he's basically, like, dying from being a Tartarus. And then he's not even helpful fighting against monsters, because he's a healer, he doesn't even, like, fight. And being a healer is all well and good in, like, bigger battles, but on quests in this world, the extent of the healing you're doing is, like, eating ambrosia. Like, he's not necessary. He does nothing helpful. And there's also the annoying fact that in this world, quests are always supposed to be 3 people unless otherwise specified in the prophecy for the quest. And they were like, we can do it with 2 people, because Percy and Annabeth had got a charter as just the 2 of them back in House of Hades, which is in the Heroes of Olympus series. Which was just, it was such a different circumstance because that wasn't actually a quest. And also, both Percy and Annabeth are capable of fighting, as opposed to Will literally just being a deadweight. And also, Will had no personality. And then there was also the issue that the plot felt completely unnecessary. There was no reason to send them into Tartarus. And it felt very much like a repeat of House of Hades, and like they'd just been casting around for, like, some plot thread that was left even slightly unsolved in order to come up with a book for this. And I almost feel like they chose Tartarus as a setting because Nico is the son of Hades. Where, by the way, Nico has already survived Tartarus in the past. But anyway, I feel like they just chose that because Nico's the son of Hades. I don't know. And then, this is a small qualm, but they way overuse the word boyfriend in the writing. Well, I'm not talking about, like, Nico and Will speaking to each other. But in the actual writing, they'll say, like, Nico looked at his boyfriend instead of Nico looked at Will way more often than they should. And it just felt like poor writing. Where I understand wanting to emphasize the romantic relationship between them, like, as a queer person, it just felt very strange and, like, poor writing. And the most annoying part was the main character in this is Nyx, who is the primordial goddess of the night. She is older than Earth. She's older than everything. And then when she's talking to them, she refers to them as each other's boyfriend. And it just sounds very anachronistic. Like, I'm sorry, I don't think primordial goddess is using the words boyfriend and girlfriend. I just don't think that's how she would refer to people. It felt very strange and out of place. That's what I have to say about that. It was not good. I gave it 3 stars, because it was still okay. It was still a Rick Riordan book. This is possibly the only Rick Riordan book I would ever advise people to skip. Because it's not remotely necessary to understand the world. I don't think it adds anything. I think if you really want Nico and Will interactions, I'm sure there's better fan fiction out there. By which I mean, there's tons of fan fiction out there. Like, I don't care that much about the couple because they've not had much screen time, or page time, but the fandom has built up a very, like, large following and large backstory around them that I think is better than this. I wouldn't recommend this. If you're a fan of the couple, just keep reading fan fiction. It's really not worth it. But then next up was a book that was totally worth it, exceeding all my expectations, which was Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This was just the most fun I've had reading a book in such a long time. I don't know what Yarros puts in this book, but it is addictive. Like, oh my god. I could not stop reading. Sure, the plot could have maybe been a little more complex and interesting, but otherwise, like, it was really good. And for what it is, which is a school setting book that's meant to set up for, like, a 6-book series, then I was perfectly satisfied with the amount of plot we got versus, like, world building and setup. And, oh my god, I love the dragons. I love Violet, our main character. I love the disability rep. Do I love it as much as ACOTAR? No. Is it close, though? Absolutely. I absolutely adored this. I can't wait for Iron Flame. If you remotely like fantasy romance, then you should absolutely pick this up. It is definitely worth the hype. Probably wouldn't recommend as much if you only like fantasy and don't care about the romance. It was so fun. I really liked the writing style. It was so good. And I adored it. 5 stars. And then was A Curious Beginning, which is the first book in the Veronica Speedwell series. It was pretty decent. It basically follows our main character, Veronica, who's a lepidopterist. I don't know. She studies butterflies. She was orphaned as a young age and raised by her 2, aunts who weren't actually biologically related to her. But when they both die, then she's kind of free to do whatever she wants, but she ends up getting entangled in this kind of conspiracy thing where she's being targeted by people and she and her allies are trying to figure out what it is. I really enjoyed our main characters. Veronica and Stoker are our main characters, where Stoker's the love interest, and I really enjoyed them. I loved their dynamic. It was, so cute. I thought the plot could probably have been a little more interesting. I still really enjoyed it. It was really fun. It was a pretty quick read, and I gave it 4 stars, and I will definitely be continuing the series. Next up was Next up was Book Lovers by Emily Henry, which I also gave 4 stars. I didn't love it as much as I liked Beach Read when I read it. I thought the setting was really cute. I really liked the dynamic between the 2 main characters, Nora and Charlie. Basically, Nora is a book agent and Charlie's an editor, and they had a bad meeting a couple of years ago and now dislike each other, or at least Nora dislikes Charlie. And basically, Nora's sister Libby, who she basically raised, is pregnant with her 3rd child, and she asks Nora to go on a vacation with her for a month to North Carolina, just the 2 of them. And so they go. Nora discovers that Charlie lives there, and they end up interacting, and it's really cute, and I love the setting. My main issue was the character Libby, where I felt like she's very ungrateful for everything Nora ever did for her, and I don't know. So I didn't like Libby, otherwise a very good book. So I gave it 4 stars because Libby is pretty significant. Nora and Libby's relationship is a very significant part of the book and of Nora's character. It's just, I did not like Libby. So 4 stars for that. And next up is Babel by R.F. Kuang, which was an absolute 5-star read. The writing's gorgeous, the magic system is so interesting, and you can just tell that R.F. Kuang is brilliant and has put so much thought into translation as a practice, and every part of the plot feels so intentional and so deeply thought out. My one critique of the book is the ending felt a little rushed and kind of overdramatic for the scope of the book previously. In another book, it might have knocked it down 1/2 star, but because I loved the rest of the book so much, I'm still giving it 5 stars. It's absolutely brilliant, and I loved all of it. If you like dark academia, read this, but really, if you remotely like fantasy, if you remotely like historical fiction, if you're remotely interested in translation or languages, then this is absolutely the book for you. It deserves all the hype it's received. And then next up was my second R.F. Kuang book of the month, which was Yellowface. And did not love this as much as Babel. It was a very quick read. I thought a lot of the way it approached issues regarding racism and representation and everything in publishing were done well. It's just, I could not. It's satire, and not a single one of the characters is remotely likable. And if that's not a problem for you, then absolutely pick this up. But for me, when I cannot feel a remote bit of sympathy for any of the characters because they're all horrible, then it becomes very hard for me to enjoy a book. So I gave it 4 stars because of that, because it's very good. I just didn't necessarily enjoy the experience of reading it because I hated all the characters so much. It follows our main character, June, who's been kind of friends with this other character named Athena since they started college together in their first year. And Athena, after college, became an immensely successful author, while June had very little success in her career as an author. And one night, June's visiting Athena at her apartment, and Athena chokes on food and dies before any help can get there. And June ends up taking one of her partially completed manuscripts and presenting it as her own, and it's very interesting. June is absolutely delusional. If you like unreliable narrators, then you'll like this. I just needed one character to root for, and I didn't even get that. I'd still definitely recommend it if you're remotely interested. It has a lot of interesting comments on the publishing industry and on representation in general in media. It's definitely a fun time if you like unreliable narrators and satire. It just wasn't personally my fave. And so those are all the novels I read this month, and now I'll be talking about the manga I read. First up is Spy Family Volume 3, which I love Spy Family more than just about anything. It's so fun. This volume had a lot of focus on Yuri, who's my least favorite character in it. But overall, I still really enjoyed it. These books give me such, like, happiness. I can't even describe it. So yeah, 5 stars. And I really recommend this manga series, or the anime. The anime is also really good. And the second season's coming out in a couple months. So I would recommend checking it out. There was Mermaid Scales in the Town of Sand, which basically follows this little girl, or not that little, she's like 12. It follows she and her father, her mother left their family. And so they move in with her grandmother in her small, like, beach town. When our main character was a child, she had gotten rescued by a mermaid there. And so she's convinced mermaids exist there. And everyone else is telling her, like, no, that's absurd. But she keeps asking around about it and kind of investigating. It becomes clear there's this, like, secret the town's keeping. It's a really fun story. It's very quick. It's only one book. It's not a series. The art style is really beautiful. And it's just really, like, it's a fun summertime read. I did give it 4 stars because the plot could have been a little more interesting, and I don't know. So yeah, I gave it 4 stars. I definitely recommend it if it sounds interesting. And then, last 2 volumes of manga I read were Orange Future and Orange to You, Dear One, which are the final 2 volumes of the Orange manga series. And they're kind of like epilogues. Basically, Orange deals with, in the future, the main characters write a letter to their past selves asking them to prevent something horrible that happens to one of them at the end of high school. And so there's basically 2 futures, where one is that future and one is the future after they make the changes. So Orange Future is kind of exploring the future, the original future, where it's following our main characters as they're recovering from this horrible thing that greatly impacted all of them. I don't know, it's extremely sad. And I don't know. I gave Orange Future 4.5 stars just because it didn't feel super cohesive. I don't know. I think the second half was better than the first half of this, but it was really good. And then the last one, Orange to You, Dear One, was like the epilogue. It's basically following the events of Orange, and it's just like the main characters getting to be happy and go on with their lives with this horrible event not happening. And it made me happy. I gave it 5 stars. I would definitely recommend Orange as a series, but I would definitely check the trigger warnings before you do that, because it deals with a lot of very heavy topics that it's important to know before you go in. But otherwise, it's a relatively short manga series. It's a really beautiful story. It's about friendship, forgiving yourself, and it's so good. I would recommend it. So yeah, that's everything I read in August. In all, I read 16 books, which I'm pretty satisfied with. There were a couple books that I wanted to get to this month that I didn't get to, which are I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Chulbuki, which I'm about halfway through. Like, I had started reading it before the end of the month, I just hadn't finished it. And then Chain of Thorns, which I'm also currently reading and absolutely loving so far. And then Tomorrow, I am postponing reading. I'll probably read it in a couple months, just because I'm not super feeling it right now. And then The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic, I have an e-arc of, and so I do need to read that this upcoming month. I forgot to put that on my TBR. And then I need to finish reading Queen of Shadows. I am pretty happy with my progress this month. My average rating was 4.28 stars. It was definitely a really weird month for me reading-wise, because I had a weird period in the middle where there was a lot of uncertainty around my housing for the upcoming year and my school for the upcoming. It was just all a big mess. So there was like a week in the middle where I literally didn't read anything because I was so stressed about all of that. But overall, it was a pretty good reading month for me, even though I didn't get to all the books I wanted, and even though I didn't read as much as I wanted. It was still a pretty good reading month for me. Thank you for sticking around to the end of the video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment about what your favorite books you read in August were. Subscribe if you want to see more videos from me, and I'll see you later.